The general folded his arms and stared across the runway with absolute certainty. "No civilian can touch this jet," he declared. "Not today. Not ever." The words echoed through the massive hangar as dozens of military officers stood silently around one of the most advanced aircraft ever built. Engineers had spent hours trying to solve a mysterious systems failure. Every attempt had ended in frustration. Then a quiet man wearing faded jeans, worn work boots, and carrying a weathered leather folder stepped forward. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a government contractor. He wasn't even supposed to be inside the restricted area. He was simply a single father who had been invited by mistake. Within minutes, everyone in that hangar would realize the biggest mistake wasn't letting him walk in. It was assuming they already knew who he was. Before we discover why one ordinary father changed everything that day, take a second to like this video, subscribe to Daddy Say Stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss another inspiring story about courage, family, and unexpected heroes. Now, let's begin. The early morning sun stretched across Falcon Ridge Air Force Base, painting the concrete runway with long golden shadows. Maintenance crews hurried between hangars while pilots prepared for one of the country's most important military demonstrations. General Marcus Whitmore stood near the entrance of Hangar 7, checking his watch every few moments. Everything had to be perfect. Defense officials, foreign military observers, and members of Congress would arrive before noon to witness the first public demonstration of the Falcon X-9, an experimental aircraft designed to redefine aerial combat. Years of research, billions of dollars, thousands of people working toward one goal. Failure was simply not an option. Yet inside the hangar, failure was exactly what everyone faced. The Falcon X-9 refused to start. Every diagnostic computer displayed different error messages. Navigation systems froze. Hydraulic controls reset themselves without warning. Power fluctuations appeared and disappeared as if the aircraft had a mind of its own. The best engineers in the country couldn't explain it. Chief Engineer Daniel Ross wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool temperature inside the hangar. "We've replaced every module that could possibly cause this," he said quietly. General Whitmore frowned. "I don't want excuses." "I'm not making excuses, sir." "Then fix it." Daniel looked back at the aircraft. "If replacing every component doesn't solve the problem." He stopped speaking. The general narrowed his eyes. "Finish your sentence." Daniel sighed. "Then the problem isn't inside the aircraft." Silence spread through the room. Nobody understood what he meant. Across town, nearly 20 miles away, Ethan Carter closed the front door of his small rented house. His 7-year-old daughter Lily skipped beside him with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. "Dad," she asked, smiling brightly, "are you nervous?" Ethan laughed softly. "A little. You always get nervous before interviews." "This one's different." Lily tilted her head. "Because it's on the Air Force Base?" He nodded. "I've never worked anywhere like that." She squeezed his hand. "They'll like you." He smiled, though he wasn't nearly as confident as his daughter. 3 years earlier, Ethan's life had looked completely different. He had been one of the youngest aerospace systems specialists at a respected aviation company. His designs solved problems that experienced engineers couldn't. Coworkers admired him. Executives trusted him. His future seemed limitless. Then, everything changed. His wife, Sarah, became seriously ill. Doctors tried everything. Treatments, surgeries, experimental medicine. Nothing worked. Hospital visits replaced family vacations. Medical bills replaced savings. Late nights at work became late nights beside hospital beds. One rainy November evening, Sarah held Ethan's hand with what little strength she had left. "Promise me something." He couldn't answer. His throat felt too tight. She smiled gently. "Promise you'll give Lily a happy childhood." Tears rolled down Ethan's face. "I promise. And promise you won't stop dreaming just because I'm gone." He shook his head. "I can't." "You can." She reached up and touched his cheek. "You have to." Those were among the last words she ever spoke. After her funeral, Ethan resigned from his engineering position. Every promotion, every opportunity, every ambitious project. None of it mattered anymore. Lily needed him. He became both father and mother overnight. Morning breakfasts, school drop-offs, homework, laundry, bedtime stories. Every responsibility belonged to him. Money became tight, very tight. Unable to commit to demanding corporate schedules, Ethan accepted work repairing agricultural equipment, generators, and old aircraft engines for small local businesses. The jobs paid far less than engineering, but they gave him something priceless: time with Lily. Each evening they ate dinner together. Every weekend they visited parks, museums, or watched airplanes fly overhead from a nearby hill. Lily loved airplanes almost as much as her father did. One afternoon she asked, "Do airplanes have feelings?" Ethan smiled. "No." "Then why do you always talk to them?" He laughed. "I guess because every machine tells a story." "Really? If you know how to listen." She giggled. "Can they hear you?" "I hope so." That became their little family joke. Whenever they saw an airplane, Lily would wave and whisper, "Tell Dad your story." Months passed. Life wasn't easy. Bills piled higher. The old truck broke down more than once. The roof leaked whenever it rained. Still, Ethan never complained in front of Lily. He wanted her to remember laughter instead of hardship. One afternoon, he received a surprising phone call. The Air Force Base nearby was searching for temporary maintenance consultants after several contractors withdrew unexpectedly. The position wasn't glamorous. It lasted only 2 weeks, but the pay would cover months of expenses. Ethan accepted immediately. He never imagined that decision would change his life forever. Back at Falcon Ridge, security officers checked every visitor entering the base. Temporary workers waited in a long line carrying identification badges. Ethan stood quietly near the back, holding the worn leather folder that contained old certifications, engineering notes, and letters from projects he had completed years earlier. Most people barely noticed him. His clothes looked ordinary. His boots were scratched. His hands showed years of physical labor. Nothing about him suggested brilliance. General Whitmore walked through the checkpoint reviewing schedules. His assistant approached hurriedly. "Sir, another temporary consultant has arrived." "I don't need another consultant." Apparently someone in procurement approved him. The general sighed. "Send him to equipment maintenance. Keep him away from Hangar 7. "Yes, sir." As Ethan received his visitor badge, he looked across the runway. Far in the distance, enormous hangar doors stood open. Inside rested a sleek black aircraft unlike anything he had ever seen. Even from hundreds of yards away, he recognized the elegant design. His eyes widened. Someone had built something extraordinary. He couldn't stop looking. Not because he wanted to touch it. Not because he wanted recognition. But because, after years away from aerospace engineering, seeing that aircraft awakened a part of himself he thought he had buried forever. He quietly tightened his grip on the weathered leather folder. Inside it was a file he hadn't opened in years. A file containing ideas, designs, and observations from a past that almost no one knew about. Before the day was over, that forgotten file would become the center of a mystery that no one at Falcon Ridge Air Force Base was prepared to face. The morning wore on, and the pressure inside Falcon Ridge Air Force Base grew heavier with every passing minute. Technicians hurried between tool carts and computer stations. Engineers spoke in low voices, comparing diagnostic reports that contradicted one another. Every attempt to restart the Falcon X-9 ended exactly the same way. Lights flashed across the cockpit, warning tones sounded, and then every system shut itself down. General Marcus Whitmore watched the scene with growing frustration. "The demonstration starts in less than 3 hours," he said. "Tell me someone has good news." No one answered. Chief Engineer Daniel Ross finally broke the silence. "We've tested every major system twice. And we're running out of theories." The general's jaw tightened. "I don't pay people for theories." Daniel looked at the aircraft. "Neither do I, sir." Meanwhile, Ethan Carter had been assigned to a maintenance workshop on the opposite side of the base. His job was simple: inspect support generators, repair electrical carts, and make sure the ground equipment remained operational. It was honest work, quiet work, exactly the kind of work he expected. He kept his head down, introduced himself politely to the other mechanics, and spent the morning replacing worn wiring inside a power unit that everyone else had written off as scrap. Within 40 minutes, it was running again. One mechanic stared at him. "I've been trying to fix that thing for 2 days." Ethan shrugged with a small smile. It wasn't the motor. What was it? The vibration sensor. The mechanic frowned. "How'd you know?" Ethan simply smiled. "Machines tell stories." The mechanic laughed. "That's a strange way to put it. It's the only way I've ever understood them." Word quietly spread through the workshop that the new temporary worker had repaired equipment no one else could fix. Most people thought little of it. Daniel Ross, however, happened to overhear the conversation while passing through the building. He paused. "What was his name?" "Ethan Carter." Daniel nodded thoughtfully before continuing toward Hangar 7. Inside the hangar, another attempt to activate the Falcon X-9 ended in failure. This time, the aircraft's left display briefly flashed a sequence of numbers before shutting down. Daniel quickly wrote them down. He had never seen that code before. Neither had anyone else. Software specialists searched through thousands of pages of documentation. Nothing. The sequence wasn't listed anywhere. General Whitmore slammed a folder onto a nearby table. "This aircraft flew perfectly during testing last month." "Yes, sir." "So what changed?" Again, silence. Across the base, Ethan sat alone during lunch beneath the shade of a large oak tree. Instead of scrolling through his phone like everyone else, he opened his weathered leather folder. Inside were neatly organized pages filled with handwritten notes, diagrams, equations, and sketches. Some pages were nearly 10 years old. Others had coffee stains and folded corners. He gently turned each page as though visiting old friends. One photograph slipped onto the ground. It showed Ethan standing beside his wife Sarah at an aviation museum. Both of them were smiling. Sarah's hand rested on her growing baby bump. Lily hadn't even been born yet. Ethan picked up the photograph and smiled sadly. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I hope I made you proud." Just then his phone buzzed. "Daddy." Lily's cheerful voice filled the speaker. "Hi, sweetheart. Guess what?" "What?" "I got a gold star in reading." "That's amazing. And Mrs. Peterson says I'm getting really good at science." "I never doubted you." "Dad." "Yes. When you're fixing airplanes today?" "I'm not fixing airplanes." She giggled. "Okay, when you're fixing things?" "Yes. Tell them I said hello." Ethan laughed. "I will. And don't forget to come home." "I never could." After ending the call, he carefully returned the photograph to the folder. Daniel Ross had unknowingly been walking nearby. He hadn't intended to eavesdrop. But hearing Ethan's gentle conversation with his daughter reminded him of his own son, who was away at college. He noticed the folder. "What are those?" Ethan looked up. "Oh, just old engineering notes." Daniel sat beside him. "You were an engineer?" "A long time ago." "What kind?" "Aerospace systems." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Ethan nodded. "I left the industry years ago." Daniel noticed several technical sketches lying open. His expression changed. These weren't ordinary notes. The equations were remarkably advanced. Some involved power management systems unlike anything used in civilian aviation. "You drew these?" "Yes." Daniel looked closer. "They're impressive." "They're old." "Old doesn't mean wrong." Ethan quietly closed the folder. "I'm just here to repair equipment." Daniel respected the answer. He stood to leave before hesitating. "Would you mind coming with me for a minute?" "Where?" "Hangar 7. Ethan looked surprised. "I don't have clearance." "I'll take responsibility." Several minutes later, they entered the enormous hangar. For the first time, Ethan stood only a few feet away from the Falcon X-9. His eyes slowly traveled across its smooth wings, hidden air intakes, and unusually shaped fuselage. He didn't speak. He simply observed. General Whitmore immediately noticed the unfamiliar face. "Who's he?" Daniel answered. "Temporary maintenance consultant." "I didn't authorize visitors." "I thought another set of eyes might help." The general looked Ethan up and down. His faded jeans, his work boots, the grease on his hands. This is not a museum. Ethan nodded respectfully. I understand. General Whitmore pointed toward the exit. No civilians beyond this point. Daniel quickly interrupted. Sir, he's an aerospace engineer. He was. Daniel looked toward Ethan. Just give him 1 minute. The general sighed impatiently. 1 minute. Nothing more. Ethan slowly walked around the aircraft. He never touched it. Instead, he watched. Listened. Almost as if the aircraft itself were speaking. The room became unusually quiet. Several engineers exchanged confused looks. After circling the aircraft once, Ethan stopped near the nose landing gear. He looked upward toward a small access panel, then toward the environmental control intake, finally toward the left side avionics compartment. He smiled very slightly. Daniel noticed. What is it? Ethan answered carefully. The airplane isn't sick. Several engineers frowned. What do you mean? It's protecting itself. General Whitmore crossed his arms. Protecting itself? Yes. The general almost laughed. It's an airplane. It follows instructions. Exactly. So, someone gave it instructions. The room fell silent. Daniel stared at Ethan. What kind of instructions? Ethan looked at the aircraft once more. I don't know yet, but I know this isn't a hardware failure. One software specialist shook his head. We've already checked the code. Ethan nodded. I believe you. So, I think you're looking in the wrong place. General Whitmore's patience finally snapped. Enough. He stepped between Ethan and the aircraft. No civilian can touch this jet. I wasn't planning to. You've had your minute. Ethan simply nodded. I'm sorry for wasting your time. He turned toward the exit without another word. As he reached the hangar doors, Daniel hurried after him. Wait. Ethan stopped. Daniel lowered his voice. You saw something. I noticed a pattern. What pattern? Ethan hesitated. Then he slowly opened his weathered leather folder. From inside, he removed a thin document covered in handwritten diagrams. Daniel looked at the title. His eyes widened instantly. The paper had been written nearly 12 years earlier. Its heading read, Adaptive Flight System Conflict Detection and Autonomous Safety Lockout Protocols. Daniel looked back at Ethan in disbelief. These ideas are almost identical to the architecture used inside the Falcon X-9. Ethan nodded quietly. I thought so. Daniel turned another page. His breathing slowed. Detailed diagrams showed exactly how an aircraft could intentionally disable itself if conflicting commands were detected from different control sources. The concept matched the Falcon X-9's mysterious behavior almost perfectly. Where did you get this? I wrote it. Daniel stared at him. You wrote this. Years ago. For whom? Ethan closed the folder. I'll explain. Daniel swallowed hard. You'd better. Because at that very moment, inside Hangar 7, the Falcon X-9 powered itself on without anyone touching a single switch. Every screen inside the cockpit lit up. Warning alarms echoed through the building. And across the largest display, one message appeared in bright white letters. Authorization conflict detected. Every engineer froze. General Whitmore slowly turned toward the glowing cockpit. For the first time that day, he wasn't looking at the aircraft. He was looking at the quiet single father walking away with an old leather folder, because somehow, the answers everyone had been searching for seemed to be inside the file he had carried all along. Here's part 3, continuing seamlessly from part 2, and bringing the story toward its emotional and inspiring conclusion. The warning echoed through Hangar 7. Authorization conflict detected. No one moved. The aircraft had powered itself on without a single engineer touching the controls. The cockpit displays glowed brightly, illuminating the stunned faces gathered around the Falcon X-9. General Marcus Whitmore took 2 quick steps toward the aircraft. Who activated it? A dozen voices answered at once. No one, sir. We were all standing here. No systems were engaged. Chief Engineer Daniel Ross looked from the cockpit to Ethan Carter, who had stopped walking at the hangar doors. Ethan. Ethan turned around slowly. I didn't do anything. I know. Daniel walked toward him, still holding the weathered document Ethan had shown him. I think it's time you told us everything. General Whitmore joined them, his expression serious. You said you wrote these concepts. I did. Start talking. Ethan looked around the hangar. Every eye was fixed on him. He took a slow breath. About 12 years ago, I worked for an aerospace research company that partnered with several defense programs. My team wasn't designing aircraft. We were developing safety protocols. Daniel nodded. Adaptive safety systems. Yes. The kind that allow an aircraft to recognize conflicting commands before something catastrophic happens. Ethan continued. Our goal was simple. If a pilot, a remote operator, and an onboard computer all tried to control an aircraft differently at the same time, the system would pause before obeying anyone. General Whitmore frowned. Why? Because history shows that accidents often happen when systems follow the wrong command too quickly. The general folded his arms. So, your solution was to make the aircraft refuse everyone? Only until it could determine which command was legitimate. Daniel looked back at the Falcon X-9. That's exactly what it's doing. Another engineer stepped forward. But your research was never published. It wasn't. Why not? Ethan hesitated. The project was canceled. Cancelled? Our company changed direction. The research was archived. General Whitmore narrowed his eyes. Then how did these ideas end up inside the Falcon X-9? I don't know. Silence settled over the room. Daniel looked at Ethan carefully. You really don't know? Ethan shook his head. I left the industry after my wife became ill. Whatever happened after that, I wasn't part of it. Daniel believed him. General Whitmore wasn't so sure. Before he could ask another question, the aircraft emitted another warning tone. A new message appeared. Secondary authorization required. Daniel hurried toward the cockpit. It's requesting validation. The software team rushed to their terminals. Within seconds, one engineer looked alarmed. Sir, the aircraft thinks 2 different command authorities exist. What does that mean? It's receiving contradictory security credentials. General Whitmore's face darkened. From where? We don't know. The engineers searched every connected system. Nothing made sense. Every network appeared secure. Every access log looked normal. Yet the aircraft continued insisting that 2 authorities were trying to control it. Ethan quietly studied the screens. Then he noticed something no one else had mentioned. May I ask a question? General Whitmore gave a reluctant nod. Go ahead. When did this problem begin? Daniel answered immediately. Yesterday afternoon. What changed yesterday? We installed the latest encrypted mission database. Ethan nodded slowly. Was it copied from another aircraft? Daniel blinked. Yes. Which one? The prototype used for software testing. Ethan smiled gently. I think your airplane is confused. Several engineers looked puzzled. Confused? The safety protocol doesn't recognize duplicated command identities. Daniel's eyes widened. Of course. Another engineer quickly understood. The prototype and the demonstration aircraft now have identical authorization signatures. Ethan nodded. From the aircraft's perspective, 2 masters are giving different instructions. General Whitmore looked skeptical. So, you're saying the airplane isn't broken? No. It's following the safety rules exactly as designed. Daniel turned toward the software team. Separate the authorization certificates. The engineers immediately began working. Minutes felt like hours. Code scrolled across large monitors. Security keys were generated. Encrypted identities were reassigned. Finally, one programmer looked up. We're ready. Daniel nodded. Apply the update. Everyone watched. The upload reached 10%. 20. 40. 75. 99. The hangar became completely silent. Then, the warning disappeared. Every cockpit display returned to normal. Hydraulic systems activated smoothly. Navigation computers synchronized. Power level stabilized. The Falcon X-9 was fully operational. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then applause broke out across the hangar. Engineers shook hands. Technicians laughed with relief. Some simply leaned against tool carts, exhausted. Daniel turned toward Ethan. You saved months of work. Ethan smiled modestly. You already had the answer. No. Daniel shook his head. We had the evidence. You understood the story. General Whitmore slowly walked toward Ethan. His expression was very different from before. You were right. Ethan remained silent. I judged you by your appearance. You didn't know me. That's no excuse. The general extended his hand. I'm sorry. Ethan accepted the handshake. So am I. The general looked surprised. For what? I almost walked away. A small smile crossed the general's face. I'm glad you didn't. Just then one of the younger engineers approached Ethan. Mr. Carter. Yes. Would you mind signing this? He held out one of Ethan's handwritten diagrams. The entire hangar laughed softly. Ethan laughed too. I've never signed engineering notes before. There's a first time for everything. Hours later, the Falcon X-9 completed its demonstration flawlessly. It soared across the blue sky with incredible precision before returning for a perfect landing. The visiting officials applauded. News reports praised the aircraft's success. Very few people knew how close the demonstration had come to being canceled. And almost no one knew the name of the quiet father who had made it possible. Later that evening, General Whitmore invited Ethan into his office. He placed a folder on the desk. We'd like to offer you a position. Ethan looked at the folder but didn't open it. It includes full benefits, flexible scheduling, and leadership over future safety systems. It sounds generous. It is. You've earned it. Ethan remained thoughtful. I have one condition. The general smiled. I expected that. I leave every afternoon at 4. The general looked puzzled. For another job? For my daughter. Ethan smiled. I promised her I'd always be there after school. The general sat quietly for a moment. Then he closed the folder. Done. No negotiations? None. He looked Ethan in the eye. A man who keeps promises like that is exactly the kind of person we want here. The following Monday, Ethan picked Lily up from school. She climbed into the truck with her usual excitement. How was your first day? He smiled. It was good. Did you fix airplanes? A little. She giggled. Did they tell you their stories? He looked out the windshield for a moment before answering. They finally did. Lily reached into her backpack. I made something. She handed him a drawing. It showed a large jet flying across a bright blue sky. Below it stood a father holding the hand of a little girl. Above them she had written in careful, uneven letters. My daddy fixes airplanes and keeps promises. Ethan felt his eyes fill with tears. He carefully folded the drawing and placed it inside the same weathered leather folder that had traveled with him for years. Not beside the engineering papers. Not beside the technical diagrams.
But on top of them.
Because every achievement in his life meant far less than the promise he had made to the little girl waiting for him every afternoon. Months later, the Falcon X-9's safety architecture became the standard for future aircraft developed under the program. Engineers often referred to it simply as Carter's Protocol, honoring the man whose quiet wisdom had prevented a costly mistake. Yet whenever Ethan was asked what accomplishment made him most proud, he never mentioned the aircraft, the awards, or the recognition. He always gave the same answer. I'm proud that my daughter never had to wonder whether I'd be there when school ended. People may remember remarkable inventions. They may celebrate brilliant ideas. They may admire extraordinary talent. But the greatest measure of a person's success is often found not in the work they do, but in the promises they keep to the people who need them most. Thank you for spending this time with Daddy Say Stories. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that kindness, humility, and keeping your word can change lives. We'll see you in the next story.